We start class on time and we dismiss on time. So you may have thought you got away from that if you're not involved or active formally in education anymore, but those old habits die hard. So we're going to start on time and end on time. Normally we bet right up against when session starts. So we will typically go up to between 2:20 and 2:25 and get everyone out in time to go to the floor, but just be prepared to go directly to the floor from this committee because we won't have a lot of time in between. Okay? We will start with committee and staff introductions. I'm Renee Erickson, Senate District 30, which is Sedgwick County, East Wichita, Derby down to Mulvane. And I'd like you also to share a little bit, if you do have an education background, share what that is. I was a teacher, principal, I was head of instructional technology, a lot of other different hats. I was on our local school board for 8 years, 2 of those as president. I came from the House, where I served on both the K-12 budget and education committees. And for the last 4 years, I've been vice chair of this committee. And with that, I'll turn to my vice chair, Senator Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Adam Thomas, District 23. That is a good chunk of Olathe and Olive Spring Hill in Johnson and Miami County. I have 5 children. That's most of my education background. When they needed emergency licenses, I got mine and was a fill-in substitute teacher in the Olathe School District for a while there. And then I was vice chair of education on the House side for 2 years and chair for the last 2 years. So I'm looking forward to continuing to serve on this very, very important committee. Thank you.
Ranking Minority Member Sykes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Dinah Sykes, this is my 9th year on the Education Committee. I am the daughter of a school teacher. She taught every grade except for kindergarten and 1st grade. I got involved because I had 2 children in public schools. One is a sophomore in college now, and thanks to our great public schools, he is about a year ahead because of his classes and the rigor that he received. And my oldest just graduated from college a semester early, so I'm looking forward to serving again. Thank you, Madam Chair.
We'll move over. We'll mix it up, and we'll go to one of our new members, Senator Starnes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brad Starnes, Senate for the 22nd District, which is all of Riley County, includes Manhattan, and within that, a diverse educational background, 43 plus years, private parochial public schools, teacher, coach, administrator, K through 12, college, university levels, and that diversity continues in my representation within Riley County. We've got 3 higher ed institutions, high schools 1 through 6A. We've got the veterans and we've got rural. So it's a very diverse and amazingly very cool district to represent. So excited what I can hopefully bring to this committee.
Senator Petty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Senator Pat Petty. I represent the 6th District, which is mostly Wyandotte County, a small portion of Johnson County. I'm starting my 4th term, 13th year in the Senate, and a lot of you wouldn't know, but a long time ago, I was actually in the House as well for 2 terms. I was an educator, a public school educator for 36 years and taught mostly primary and actually started early learning preschool, at-risk preschool in my school district and taught in that for the last 10 years of my career. So I do have a big interest in early childhood and would encourage all of you to be part of the Early Childhood Caucus.
Senator Shane.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Doug Shane from Senate District 37. This is my first session. I had the opportunity to serve as a Board of Education member in USD 416 in my hometown of Lewisburg, Kansas. And I'm currently a professor of practice at Kansas State University doing graduate level instruction related to the animal health industry and life sciences.
Senator Gossage.
Senator Beverly Gossage. I wanted to be a teacher since I was 4 years old and became an elementary classroom teacher. I represent Senate District 9, which represents parts of 4 counties, Johnson, Leavenworth, Wyandotte, and Douglas, and did teach elementary in the elementary classroom both on the Missouri side as well as on the Kansas side. Mother of four, the youngest of my four children was severely dyslexic and language delayed. So I did homeschool him starting in his fourth grade year, and I'm proud to say he can read anything now. I enjoy being on this committee, and there's a lot of good work that's done here. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Murphy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Michael Murphy, 34th District, which is Reno, Kingman, and Barber County. And I'm kind of like Senator Thomas. I've got kids and grandkids in school. Are you sure? I'll just let it go at that.
That's very wise, thank you. Senator Argabright.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mike Argabright, I represent the 17th District, which is Lyon County, Morris County, and Geary County, which Fort Riley is in part of that. My background, I'm a teacher, coach, administrator, retired after 17 years as a superintendent.
Senator Rose.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is TJ Rose. I'm representing District 35 in Southern Johnson County. My educational experience is I was a secondary education math major at Kansas State University, and I taught for 4 years.
Senator Blasey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chase Blasey, representing District 26, which is generally the western half of Sedgwick County. So parts of Wichita and then all the small communities in the western half, including Goddard, Colwich, Cheney, Clearwater, go on. My only experience is I'm a proud dad with 3 boys in early childcare centers and elementary schools.
Before we move to staff, I have 3 grandchildren, so just for the record. We'll start with our revisers. Tamara.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am Tamara Lawrence with the Office of Revisor of Statutes.
I'm Masai Noti with AV Tech.
Julia Kofoid with Legislative Research.
Matthew Willis with Legislative Research.
Cindy Rexer, Committee Assistant, and I have 10 grandchildren.
I'm going to catch you one of these days, maybe, Cindy. Thank you. If you are new to the Senate or the Legislature, I can tell you before we start, the staff is the key. They are extremely hardworking. They do a great job, so please let them know your appreciation. We cannot do the work we do without them, so appreciate everyone being here. We'll go ahead and get started then with the rest of our agenda. This is a paperless committee. So everything you will find either on the legislative website under committees, and then you can go and find this, or you can go to the S Drive, and everything will be uploaded there for your use. The committee rules are there, so I would encourage you to take a look at the committee rules. On Thursday, we will have questions or answer any concerns you have, and we will vote on the rules on Thursday. So please take a look at those before committee on Thursday and let me know any questions or concerns. Yes, and the guidelines as well for conferees. So all of that is available. Please make sure if you have any questions to bring those on Thursday. Next, we have requests for bill introductions. Are there any bill introductions today? Seeing none. We're going to start, and I want to explain why we're going to do this next presentation. If you don't know, there is a new school funding formula which has to occur by July 1st of 2027. And we hear a lot about the Constitution and as it relates to education. So I want this committee will not actually be writing the school finance formula, but I want us to all have a basic understanding because being on this committee, you're going to get questions about that process. So I want to start with a review of Article 6 of the Constitution, which is the provision or the article that deals with education, and make sure we understand that going forward because that is the basis for all we do. And I think we need to separate what we've heard, whether that's true or not, and have an opportunity to ask our revisers any questions we have regarding what we've heard and separate fact from fiction as we move through our work here in this committee. So with that, we are going to have a presentation on Article 6. And is that you, Tamara? Tamara drew the short straw. So thank you, Tamara.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, committee. As the chair said, I'm going to provide a broad overview of the constitutional roles and obligations of the legislature, the State Board of Education, and local boards of education with regard to the public education system in this state, and how they intersect under their constitution, specifically in Article 6. Just as a heads up, I am going to briefly mention school finance because it is part of Article 6, but I'm not going to go in depth in that. That's a whole other issue. You should have the language of Article 6 in a memo. It should be online. And at the very back of that memo, there is the language of Article 6 in its entirety. If you don't want to read the entire thing, on the first page and a half of the memo are the specific provisions that I am going to reference today. So the current version of Article 6 was ratified in 1966. And since then, both the Kansas Supreme Court and the Attorney General have weighed in on whether certain legislative action conflicts with the constitutional authority of the state board or local boards of education. And everything I'm about to say comes from the Constitution itself, those court cases, or the Attorney General's opinions. And starting on page 5 of the memo are the citations to and summaries of those relevant court cases and Attorney General's opinions, not including school finance. And I'm not going to go through each one individually, but they are the basis of this overview, and I wanted you to have them just in case you wanted more information. So with all that said, let's get into it. I'm going to start with the legislature's constitutional role in public education. And first, I'm going to start with Article 2, not Article 6. This provision vests legislative power in the legislature, specifically the power to pass, amend, and repeal laws. That is an an exclusive power of the legislature. And I mention this because the Supreme Court has recognized that Article 6 must be read in conjunction with that Article 2 power granted to the legislature. So now on to the specifics of Article 6. Section 1 requires the legislature to provide for intellectual, educational, vocational, and scientific improvement by establishing and maintaining public schools, educational institutions, and related activities. Sections 2 and 3 of Article 6 require the legislature to provide for the State Board of Education and its membership. The legislature has done that in KSA 72-243 and so on. And finally, Article 6, Section 6B requires the legislature to make suitable provision for finance of the educational interests of the state. This is the provision that has been at the heart of various school finance litigation over the years. And according to the court, the suitable provision for finance of the public school system must be both adequate and equitable. And to evaluate whether a school financing system is constitutionally adequate and equitable, the court did establish separate legal tests for those in Gannon. So very quickly, to satisfy the equity test, the legislature must ensure that the school finance system provides school districts with reasonably equal access to substantially similar educational opportunity through similar tax effort. And to satisfy the adequacy test, the legislature must ensure that the public education financing system, through both its structure and implementation, is reasonably calculated to have all Kansas public education students meet or exceed the Rose capacities. So that is a quick summary of the legislature's constitutional role and obligations when it comes to education in the state. So now I'm going to talk about the State Board of Education. And as I just mentioned, Section 2 of Article 6 requires the legislature to provide for a State Board of Education. Section 2 also provides that the State Board of Education shall have general supervision of the K-12 public education system. On this, the court has held that the State Board's general supervisory authority is self-executing, meaning that the State Board does not require legislation to exercise that authority. The court has also stated that the scope of this self-executing power is related to the basic mission of the state board. And the state board's mission is to equalize and promote the quality of education by such things as statewide accreditation and certification of teachers and schools. In addition, two attorneys generals have opined that the establishment of minimum curriculum and graduation requirements could be included in the scope of the state board's self-executing authority. Now, this self-executing authority does not necessarily prohibit legislation that falls within the scope of that power. The court has said that the legislature may enact legislation to facilitate or assist in the operation of the self-executing provision, so long as that legislation is in harmony with and not in derogation of the constitutional provision. The court has held that legislation may be enacted to facilitate the operation of a provision, prescribe an enforcement practice or remedy, or place reasonable safeguards around the exercise of that right. So now I'm going to talk about local boards of education. Article 6, Section 5 provides that local public schools shall be maintained, developed, and operated by local boards of education. And unlike with the state board, the court has held that this constitutional authority of local boards is not self-executing, meaning that the exercise of their authority is generally dependent upon statutory and regulatory oversight. And with regard to local boards, we know their constitutional authority is not self-executing, so it does require some legislative oversight. However, the court has indicated that the legislature does not have complete authority over the duties and actions of local school boards. Instead, the court has found that the constitutional duties and obligations of the legislature and local boards must be read together and harmonized so that both entities may carry out their respective obligations, so that legislation cannot unduly interfere with or hamstring the local boards in performing their constitutional duty to maintain, develop, and operate local public schools. So that is a very quick summary of Article 6 roles and responsibilities. Ultimately, each entity has its own role in public K-12 education in the state, but they do also have to work harmoniously together to balance those for the educational system in the state to function in a constitutional way. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Committee, what questions do we have for the reviser? None? Okay, thank you very much, Tamara. Next, we will look at highlights of the 2024 education legislative session to kind of remind us some of the major things where we've been and then where we are going with that. We have KLRD Matt Willis. Thank you, Matt.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Committee. Again, I'm Matthew Willis, Senior Research Analyst with Legislative Research. I will be speaking from our Summary of Legislation publication. You have the entire publication provided to you. I will be talking from our education section, which begins on page 85 of the PDF, if you were following along. I will attempt to hit the highlights. I was not expecting as much time, so I will work on the fly. So I am going to start off with what was the largest education bill from last session, which was Senate Bill 387, well, House Sub for Senate Bill 387. Primarily, this bill made appropriations for the State Department of Education for fiscal years 24, 25, as well as a little bit for fiscal year 26. Let's see, so for fiscal year 25, the bill appropriated $6.6 billion, including $4.9 billion of state general fund, and included all the major categories of school finance, CAPERS payments, as well as some additional special education state aid, both from state general fund and some American Rescue Plan Act dollars. Additionally, the bill also contained a $5 million appropriation for a public-private partnership for some childcare in Northwest Kansas. That was a one-year appropriation, and that is not ongoing. It was to match some grant monies from a private organization, if I remember right. Additionally, the bill created the Education Funding Task Force, which the chair referenced, that will be meeting over the course of the next few years to work on the new school finance formula, as well as repealed authorization for the Special Education and Related Services Funding Task Force. The bill prescribed membership, some non-voting members, requirements for reports, and kind of other elements fleshing out that task force. Additionally, the bill tweaked the special education excess cost formula. If you're familiar with it, I can go into some details. If you're not, I'm sure at some point we will probably talk about that more. Basically, it is a formula used to determine additional monies the state appropriates for special education costs in excess of a, quote, kind of standard education. And this bill tweaked some of the formula of how that number is determined. Again, I'm happy to go into details of any more of these things for questions. I'm just kind of keeping it high level for now. The bill further required a pilot program working its way towards some at-risk accountability plans and other things around districts' spending, and then kind of reporting how they are utilizing that at-risk funding and some performance measures. Through that, the bill further made some changes to the open enrollment legislation, which just began with this school year as far as being fully enacted. It required school districts to give priority to non-resident students who reside in Kansas over a non-resident student who lives in another state outside of some certain circumstances, as well as clarified that non-resident students who are already in the district or once accepted are able to continue their enrollment until they graduate from high school, so as to kind of clarify that. And then, as I noted, it did a lot. It included some changes to the school district building closure process that had recently been enacted by better defining what a building is when a school district needs to come before the legislature to seek approval to sell it. It made some changes to virtual school state aid. And last but not least, made some changes to allowing virtual school students to participate in CASA activities in the school district in which they reside, not having to only participate in the district in which they may be enrolled in that virtual school. So that was the largest of them. Additional ones that I will highlight are Senate Bill 19 established the Emerge program, which is a scholarship program for National Guard members seeking to obtain a graduate degree, as well as requiring school districts to have a cardiac emergency response plan and dealing with some elements for defibrillators and whatnot. Senate Bill 73 is notable because it changed how we do the enrollment determination criteria for KESA, the Maine School Finance Act, by moving it to current year enrollment or prior year enrollment rather than prior year or second preceding year, though it does allow for the 24-25 school year to use an arithmetic mean of the second preceding year and the prior year just for that 1 year as kind of a bridge for districts to get there. Let's see, get back to 37. Additional of note, last year the legislature passed Senate Bill 438 that establishes the Kansas Blueprint for Literacy. Most of the elements of this Blueprint for Literacy is more in regards to the Board of Regents as far as establishing a literacy advisory committee, creating the position of the director of literacy within the State Board of Regents, and coming forth with a blueprint for establishing centers of reading excellence and some other elements to kind of promote and increase reading throughout the state. It also contains some provisions amending some various scholarship programs and requiring the State Department of Education to provide a report on post-secondary achievement and post-secondary success. And I think those are the primary highlights. Again, I'm happy to go over anything else if anyone has questions of what I talked about or anything further.
Thank you, Matt. Committee, what questions do you have? Okay, we're going to have to get warmed up. Maybe we're just slow out of the gate. I understand. But Senator Shane, did you have a question or comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Willis, for participation in that pilot at-risk accountability plan, was that voluntary participation by select districts, or how were the districts that are participating in that program selected?
I would need to go back and review my notes. I am not as up to date on that part, but I believe Tamara might remember by chance.
Tamara?
I didn't remember. I'm actually going to give credit to John Hess with the department, but he is telling me it's voluntary.
Okay, may I ask a follow-up? And how many districts are participating in that pilot program? An estimate is okay.
Yeah. May I defer to John if he happens to know? He is saying about 10. So.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Senator Sykes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not a question, but I know there are a lot of reports. One of them you highlighted, the new literacy, because January 1st that was due. Will this committee get, I know I have received copies, but wanting to make sure, because we have several new members, that they're getting copies of those. Cindy is always really good.
Yes, we can make sure that, as Senator Sykes said, that report was due January 1st. We do have it. And we have a pretty lengthy list of required reports that are due to this committee, and we will make sure that all of those are distributed. But since that was before we were actually here and on the ground, we will make sure the committee gets that report. Thank you, Senator Sykes. Anything else? Thank you, Matt. I wanted to make sure that we got both of those presentations in, and since we do have a little bit of time, I would like to go back and Tamara ask a few questions, if you don't mind. So, and you can stay there if you would like. It's up to you. But I think one of the confusions that a lot of people have is when they hear self-executing powers. So can you define what self-executing powers in? And part B of that is that a blanket authority or is it situational? Let's start there.
Thank you for your patience. I wanted to make sure that I was looking at the actual court case to make sure that I get the actual language. And I believe what the court has said is that these self-executing powers of the state board, as I mentioned, are for their mission. And it is not complete, it's self-executing in part. So the Constitution reserves certain authorities to the legislature, for example, to establish the state board and the provision of finance. Those are reserved for the legislature. So it's not that the state board has complete authority over all these things without any interference from the legislature, but they do have self-executing powers over their mission to provide quality education. And self-executing means they can take action without the legislature enacting any legislation, directing them or providing any parameters for them to do those things within their mission. Did I make it better or worse?
I'm not sure. I'm going to drill down a little bit here. So when you say to fulfill their mission, where is their mission? Is their mission constitutional? Is that being defined by statute? Is that being self-defined, that mission of providing quality education?
The first place I run into it is in the KNEA case, which is from 1979, and I'm not entirely sure where the Supreme Court got this, but there the court said the board's mission is to equalize and promote the quality of education for students of this state by such things as statewide accreditation and certification of teachers and schools. Then it does provide a cite to a 1978 statute, which I would have to look up. But the initial place I see that is in this KNEA case.
Thank you. And I want to be very clear, I am not an attorney, so I'm just trying to help us all get a lay of the land. So here's my very succinct layman's question. The authority, going back to what you had just said, the authority for accreditation, teacher licensure, and curricular standards, is that statutory? Is that constitutional?
According to the Kansas Supreme Court, the state board has self-executing powers over things such as statewide accreditation and certification of teachers and schools. An attorney general's opinion that came later also included minimum graduation requirements in that as well.
I guess we're getting into my circular question here. Is the court saying that as a result of what is in statute or a constitutional?
They are citing the Constitution.
Okay, well, I have some court, I just kind of want to clear this up. So what I'm seeing on, the court has said, and this is a quote, even when a constitutional provision is self-executing, the legislature may enact legislation to facilitate or assist in the operation, but that whatever legislation is adopted must be in harmony, as you pointed out, with the provisions of the Constitution. So I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but how do we know when it's self-executing and when it's not self-executing? Because we've seen that there are times, it's not a blanket self-execution authority. Correct. It's situational, so how do we know when that is?
When there is a challenge to that authority.
In an effort to clarify, I think maybe I'm muddying the waters here. Okay. Well, as you can see, this is a complex issue. A lot of it, Article 6, if you've not read our Constitution, I highly recommend you do that. It's 15 articles, it's short. Article 6 is short. And I know we have, correct me if I'm wrong, Tamara, over 900 statutes that deal with this, multiple court cases. So as we have conversations throughout this committee, as you can see, don't hesitate to ask. This is by far not cut and dried. So if you have questions along these lines, please let us know and we will try to get as much clarity as we can, because the summary of court cases that I have read, it definitely is an issue. I think it's going to be an issue, as we pointed out earlier, as we go into a discussion of the school finance formula. So we have to make sure that we're on solid ground as we proceed. So please, if you have questions, let us know. Oh, Tamara.
I also just want to note that to date, no legislative enactment has been declared unconstitutional under Article 6, Sections 2 or 5, like relating to the state board or local public school boards.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm sorry, Senator Petty.
So, Madam Chair, am I hearing you say that you feel that we will be dealing with legislation this year that could challenge the self-executing authority of the State Board of Education?
No, by no means, no. No. Other questions? I think we need clarity on what that means because as we've seen, there's a lot of information out there and I think we need to clarify, but challenge or do anything that would, no. I just want us to have a correct understanding. Senator Shane.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Tamara, for clarification, if there was an instance where the legislature had interest in crafting statute that had implications on that self-executing authority, that would be acceptable on a constitutional basis, as long as it was harmonized.
Tamara?
With the State Board.
Yes, so when legislative action or legislative enactments happen, like bills, there is a presumed constitutionality of that enactment. So there could be a challenge, but it would be presumed constitutional, and then the burden would be on the challenger to prove that it wasn't. And I've lost my train of thought. Can you clarify?
I think that answers the question. May I ask a follow-up question? Have the courts came to a conclusion on if our citizens' Article 6 rights for education, if those are recognized as an individual right or as a collective right?
Tamara?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would have to do some more digging to see if I can find a specific answer to that question.
Senator Sykes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tamara, so as we talk about to date, no legislative enactment has been declared unconstitutional under Article 6. We have had legislation in funding that the funding level was found unconstitutional. Can you explain a little bit of the difference in how that, functions?
Yes, thank you. So when I made that statement, I should be more clear. I was speaking specifically to sections 2 and 5. The school finance challenges have come under section 6.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much for the information, committee. We will be meeting Thursday, and we will have a presentation, I believe, by our research department. Is that you, Mr. Willis, on K-12 by the numbers. And we're going to focus on outcomes and student achievement on the state of K-12. So we will look forward to that. Senator Sykes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, one other question. I know we will have access because we're going paperless, which I applaud. Thank you, Madam Chair. But how early will we have access to those? And will it be on the S drive? Because I know testimony and things like that, a lot of times we didn't have access to until committee started.
Cindy, would you care to address that?
I always send it out to you as soon as I get it. It has to be to me by noon the day before the committee meeting, and then I put it on the S drive at the same time. So if you just keep checking the S drive, you'll probably find what you're looking for. You're welcome.
We will try, depending on the amount or the volume of testimony. Sometimes when we have hundreds, and that happens at times, it takes longer. Most times, as Cindy said, it will be available the day before, but we'll do our best to get it to you in a timely manner so you're prepared for committee. Any other questions or comments? Thank you so much. Appreciate everyone. We are adjourned until Thursday.